The taxi driver hesitated at the bottom of the long, winding driveway, his eyes flicking to the meter and then to my cane. "You sure you don't want me to take you up to the front door, sir? That hill looks like a beast. And with that hip?" "I'm fine," I lied, though the painkillers were already wearing off, leaving a dull, throbbing ache in my right side. "The gate code is finicky. I'll walk." I handed him a crisp $50 bill, my own money, drawn from the emergency cash stash I kept sewn into the lining of my trench coat, and watched him reverse down the misty road. The truth was, I didn't want a stranger to witness my humiliation. My son, Julian, was supposed to pick me up from the hospital at 10 in the morning. It was now 3 in the afternoon. He hadn't called. He hadn't texted. And when I had called the house, the line had rung endlessly until the voicemail picked up Serena's voice, bright and artificial, telling me to have a blessed day. The fog clinging to Blackwood Bluffs was thick today, obscuring the ocean below, but it couldn't dampen the sound that reached me as I trudged up the gravel path. It was a screech, high-pitched, metallic, and violent, the sound of steel tearing against steel. My stomach turned over. It wasn't the nausea from the anesthesia. It was the instinct I had honed over 40 years as a forensic auditor. I knew the sound of destruction that I crested the hill, my breath coming in shallow rasps, and stopped dead at my home. The mid-century masterpiece I had purchased in a blind trust 20 years ago loomed in the distance, its glass walls dark. But the activity wasn't at the main house. It was at the clock tower. The detached garage, which I had converted into a workshop the year my wife Martha died, was under siege. A massive yellow skip bin sat in the driveway, already half full of splintered mahogany and twisted brass. 2 men in coveralls were hauling out the remains of a grandfather clock, a 19th century German movement I had spent 6 months restoring. "Careful with the glass," a voice barked. I looked toward the oaken doors of the workshop. Serena stood there, clipboard in hand, pointing a manicured finger at a stack of shelving. She was wearing a white cashmere tracksuit that probably cost more than the workers' monthly wages combined. "Get those workbenches out," she commanded. "The flooring guys are coming at 5. I need the space cleared for the meditation mats." I moved faster than my surgeon would have advised, the gravel crunching loudly under my orthopedic shoes. "Stop," I croaked. The word was weak, caught in my dry throat. I cleared it and shouted, "Stop." The workers paused, holding a heavy oak cabinet between them. Serena turned, her expression shifting from annoyance to a practiced, pitying smile. "Elias," she exclaimed, not moving to help me as I stumbled toward them. "You're back early. Julian said you were staying another night for observation." "I was discharged hours ago," I said, my voice shaking not from age, but from a cold, quiet fury. I pointed my cane at the skip bin. "What are you doing?" "That is my equipment. Those are my clocks." "Oh, don't be dramatic, Elias," she said, waving her hand as if swatting away a fly. "We're doing you a favor. You can't stand at those benches anymore with your bad hip. It's a safety hazard. Besides, we need the space. The Awaking Your Inner Goddess retreat is this weekend, and I promised the VIP clients a dedicated sound healing studio." I looked past her, into the hollowed-out shell of my sanctuary. The oil stains on the floor where I had taught Julian to change a tire were being scrubbed away with acid. The pegboard where Martha had hung her charcoal sketches was bare. "Where are they?" I asked, my heart hammering against my ribs. "Where are Martha's drawings?" Serena checked her Apple Watch, clearly bored. "The old sketches? Oh, don't worry. I didn't throw those away. That would be wasteful." She gestured to a folding table set up near the garden path. Sitting there, in a neat pile, were my late wife's intimate sketches, drawings of our son as a baby, sketches of the coastline, private doodles she had made while we drank coffee in the mornings. There was a sign taped to the table. Vintage artisan prints $50 each. My vision blurred. It was a physical blow, harder than any fall. She wasn't just destroying my memory of Martha. She was commodifying it. She was selling the fragments of my dead wife's soul to pay for yoga mats. You are selling them? I whispered. They fit the rustic chic aesthetic, Serena said, tapping her pen against the clipboard. Victoria suggested it. She said, you have boxes of this junk gathering dust. We're actually turning a profit on your clutter. You should be thanking us. Dad. I turned to see Julian jogging down from the main house. He looked breathless, his face flushed. For a second, I thought he was running to help me, to stop this madness. Dad, you're back, he said, stopping a few feet away, avoiding my eyes. Look, I know this looks bad, but Serena has this big opportunity, and we really need the revenue this retreat will bring in. The overhead on the house is, well, it's a lot. The overhead? I repeated, staring at my son. The overhead that I pay Julian? Technically, the trust pays it. Serena interjected smoothly, stepping between us. And since Julian is the face of the family now, we have to make decisions that maximize our assets. A dusty workshop full of old gears is a liability. A wellness studio is an asset. I built those clocks, I said, looking at Julian. I built the one in the hall for your wedding. It was loud, Dad, Julian mumbled, looking at his shoes. The ticking, it echoes. Serena says it disturbs the feng shui. Feng shui, I repeated. The absurdity of it tasted like ash in my mouth. Just go inside, Dad, Julian pleaded, his voice dropping to a whisper. Mom, I mean, Victoria is making tea. We set up your room in the basement suite. It's warmer down there, less drafty. The basement, asked. My room, the master suite, had been on the second floor for 20 years. We needed the master suite for the gold tier guests, Serena said, signaling the workers to dump the oak cabinet into the skip dock crash. The sound of the wood splintering was final. I watched a brass pendulum, one I had polished by hand just last week, slide out of the debris and land in the mud near my feet. I looked at them. My son, a man of 40 who still looked like a scolded child. My daughter-in-law, a woman who looked at me and saw nothing but an expiration date. They thought I was helpless. They saw a shuffling old man in a trench coat who needed a ride from the hospital. They didn't see the man who had once frozen the assets of a cartel front company in less than 12 minutes. They didn't see the man who knew exactly which tax code Serena was violating by running a commercial enterprise on a residential property zoned for conservation. Fine, I said. The word surprised them. Serena blinked. Fine, I'm tired, I said, leaning heavily on my cane, letting my shoulders slump. I just want to rest. The basement is fine. Serena beamed, a predator who had just secured a meal. See, I told you he'd be reasonable, Julian. He knows it's for the best. She turned back to the workers. Keep going. I want this painted sage tranquility by sunset. Julian lingered for a moment, looking at me with a flicker of guilt. But then Serena called his name, and he trotted after her like a well-trained spaniel. I stood alone in the driveway for a long moment. The mist was turning to rain. Slowly, painfully, I bent down. My hips screamed in protest, but I ignored it. I reached into the mud and picked up the brass pendulum. It was heavy, cold, and solid. I wiped the dirt off it with my thumb. It was a regulator pendulum. Its job was to keep the time precise, to ensure that every second was accounted for. I slipped the heavy brass disc into my pocket. It thumped against my hip as I walked toward the house, a hidden weight that they had forgotten to confiscate. They had broken the clock. They had sold the memories. They had moved me to the dark. But they had forgotten one thing. I was the one who wound the springs. I walked to the basement door, not as a father returning home, but as an auditor arriving at a crime scene. The assessment had begun. The basement smelled of damp cardboard and neglect. It was a utility space, designed for furnaces and water heaters, not for an invalid recovering from hip surgery. There was a single cot pushed against the concrete wall, dressed with scratchy polyester sheets that I recognized from the guest room we had cleared out 5 years ago. Above my head, the floorboards creaked rhythmically. Click-clack, click-clack. Serena's heels. She was pacing in the living room, probably directing the placement of her statement pieces. I sat on the edge of the cot, listening. To the untrained ear, it was just noise. To a forensic auditor, it was data. The heavy thud of furniture being dragged, that was the solid oak dining table my grandmother's being shoved into the garage to make room for a minimalist grazing station. The shrill laughter, that was Victoria, drinking my vintage Bordeaux at 2 in the afternoon that I waited until the house fell into a lull. The contractors had left for lunch. Serena's voice drifted from the patio, chatting on the phone about manifesting abundance. I grabbed my cane and began the slow, agonizing ascent up the basement stairs. Every step sent a jolt of fire through my hip, but I needed to see the paperwork. A financial crime is like a physical wound. You have to inspect the edges to know how deep the infection goes. I emerged into the kitchen. It was unrecognizable. The warm cherry wood cabinets Martha and I had picked out in the 90s were being painted a sterile, glossy white. The granite countertops were covered in swatches of fabric and architectural blueprints. And there, sitting on top of the espresso machine, was the mail that I shuffled over, hunching my shoulders to appear smaller, frailier. I sorted through the pile with trembling hands. A performance for the security cameras I knew Serena had installed to monitor the staff. Invoice, final notice. Invoice that I slipped a thick envelope from Lux Escapes Design Build into the pocket of my cardigan. Then I saw the credit card statement. It was for the joint account I shared with Julian, a safety net account I kept with a floating balance of around $50,000. Intended for medical emergencies or house repairs. I tore the corner open just enough to see the balance. Remaining credit, $142. Minimum payment due, $4,800.00. My chest tightened. They hadn't just used the money, they had maxed it out in 3 days. I scanned the transaction list. Lumber Liquidators, $12,000. Zenith Audio Systems, $8,500. Pure Aura Crystals, $4,200.4,000 for rocks. They had liquidated my emergency fund for rocks. What are you doing? I froze. Victoria stood in the doorway holding a glass of red wine. Her lipstick was smeared, and she was wearing one of Martha's silk robes, a robe I hadn't been able to bring myself to touch since the funeral. I was looking for my heart medication, I stammered, letting my hand shake visibly. I thought I left it on the counter. Victoria rolled her eyes, taking a long sip of the wine. God, Elias, you're like a ghost haunting this place. The medicine is in the basement. Serena moved all your geriatric clutter down there so we could sanitize the kitchen. She walked over and snatched the mail from my hand. And stop touching the mail. You'll lose something important. Julian handles the bills now. Julian handles them, I repeated softly. Of course. He's the man of the house, she said, leaning against the counter and looking at me with a mixture of pity and disgust. You had your time, Elias, but let's be honest, you are always a bit tight, penny pinching. Serena is finally bringing this estate into the 21st century. You should be grateful she's letting you stay here for the retreat. Most families would have put you in a home by now. A home, I echoed. Yes, very generous. Just go back downstairs. She waved her hand, shooing me away. And stay out of the way when the caterers arrive. We don't want you tripping over a waiter and causing a lawsuit. We can't afford any bad press right now. I turned and shuffled away, the confused old man act protecting me like a shield. But as I descended the stairs back into the dark, my mind was racing with the precision of a supercomputer. They thought the money came from a bottomless pit. They thought the house was an asset they had inherited in all but name. I sat on the cot and pulled the crumpled invoice from my pocket. I smoothed it out on my knee. What they didn't know, what even Julian didn't know, was the structure of the Sterling Preservation Trust. Years ago, when I was hunting down assets for the federal government, I learned how the ultra-wealthy protected their empires. I had set up this estate as a fortress. The house, owned by the trust. Julian and Serena were tenants at sufferance. They paid zero rent, but they had zero rights. The cars, leased by the trust for executive use. The business, Serena's interior design firm, Elias Sterling Interiors, operated on a revolving line of credit secured by, you guessed it, the trust. And I was the sole trustee. They saw me as a senile dependent living in their house. In reality, they were squatters living in my bank vault. I looked at the credit card statement again. They had drained the $50,000 decoy account. They assumed that when it hit zero, I would simply transfer more from my retirement savings, just as I had always done to keep the peace. I had been the invisible cushion, absorbing their falls, paying their debts, smoothing the road so they never felt a bump. No more. I whispered to the damp walls. I reached under the mattress and pulled out an old, battered laptop. It was a ThinkPad, heavy as a brick, with no camera and no microphone. Serena had laughed at it once, asking why I didn't get an iPad. I opened it. The screen glowed blue in the darkness. I didn't need Wi-Fi. I had a satellite uplink dongle, a relic from my field days, that bypassed the house network entirely. I logged into the trust's banking portal. Sterling Preservation Trust. Total liquid assets, $14,200,000. Real estate holdings, $8,500,000. Current status, active. I hovered my mouse over the Beneficiary Distributions tab. Currently, it was set to auto refill. Monthly stipend, $25,000, and auto pay, household utilities/leases. My finger hovered over the suspend all button. It would be so easy. I could end it right now. I could shut off the power, cancel the cards, and watch them panic within the hour. But a good auditor doesn't just catch the thief. He waits until the thief has spent the money, incriminated his partners, and signed the confession. I needed to hurt them. Not just financially, but socially. I needed to let them build their wellness retreat on a foundation of sand, and then, when the cameras were rolling and the VIPs were watching, I would let the tide come in. I navigated to the credit card portal for the specific card Serena had maxed out. Status, active. Action, report lost/stolen. A prompt popped up. Are you sure? This will immediately freeze all associated cards and decline pending transactions. I thought about the $4,000 worth of crystals. I thought of Martha's sketches being sold for $50 a pop. I thought of the basement dampness seeping into my hip. I clicked confirm. Upstairs, I heard the front door slam. Mom, I'm heading to the florist, Serena shouted. I need to pick up the orchid wall for the entrance. I closed the laptop and lay back on the cot, listening to the muffled sound of her G-Wagon starting up in the driveway. The engine roared, a beast of a machine that cost $2,000 a month, paid for by a man she considered furniture. Drive safe, Serena, I whispered into the dark. It's a long walk back. The audit had officially begun. The dinner table was set with the kind of performative elegance that only people with no real taste can achieve. geometric slate placemats, gold-rimmed wine glasses, and a centerpiece of white lilies that smelled faintly of a funeral parlor. I sat at the far end of the table, nursing a glass of tap water. My hip was throbbing in time with the bass-heavy ambient lounge music Serena had playing on the Sonos speakers. Serena stormed in from the hallway, throwing her car keys into a crystal bowl with a violent clatter. "I am going to strangle the manager at Petals and Thorns," she announced, sliding into her chair. She poured herself a glass of wine, filling it to the brim. My card was acting up. The chip wouldn't read. I had to make them hold the entire order until tomorrow morning. "Can you believe the incompetence?" I took a slow sip of water. "Technology," I murmured. "Unpredictable." Across from me, Julian was scrolling through his phone, his face bathed in the blue light of the screen. He didn't look up. "Did you call the bank?" "I didn't have time to sit on hold with some outsourced idiot," Serena snapped. "I'll deal with it tomorrow. I have bigger problems. We have 3 influencers coming from LA who are vegan, gluten-free, and nightshade intolerant. And the house." She turned her gaze on me, her eyes narrowing. "The house still has a certain atmosphere." Victoria, who was picking at a plate of sashimi, let out a short, sharp laugh. "He means you, Elias. You're the atmosphere." I set my glass down. "I am recovering from surgery, Victoria. I'm not a ghost." "You might as well be," Serena said, stabbing a piece of tuna. "Look, Elias, we need to talk about the weekend. This retreat isn't just a party. It's the launch of the Sterling method. It's our future. We can't have interruptions." "Interruptions?" I repeated. "You shuffling around in that trench coat," she said, gesturing vaguely at my attire. "The coughing, the cane, this. It's heavy energy, low vibration. We're selling vitality, youth, renewal." She paused, taking a sip of wine before delivering the blow. "We need you to stay in the basement suite from Friday morning until Monday afternoon. We've set up a microwave and a mini fridge. You won't have to come upstairs at all." The silence that followed was thick. I looked at my son. This was the moment. The wolf pack structure I had analyzed for years always had a weak link, a moral pivot point. Julian was that point. He was my son. I had taught him to fish on the pier below this house. I had paid for his degree when he failed his first year. "Julian," I asked, my voice steady, "is this what you want? You want to lock your father in the boiler room?" Julian finally looked up from his phone. His eyes met mine, and for a second, I saw the boy he used to be, scared, unsure, looking for approval. But then he glanced at Serena, who was staring at him with cold, expectant eyes. The fear of his wife outweighed the love of his father. It was a simple calculation. "Dad, come on," Julian said, his voice pleading but weak. "It's just 3 days. Serena has worked really hard on this. We need the house to be perfect. You know how you get with the TV volume and the hearing aids screeching. It's just better if you're downstairs. For everyone." "For everyone," I echoed. "We are the brand now, Dad," Julian added, gaining a little unearned confidence. "This estate, it's too much for one old man anyway. We're turning it into something relevant. You're retired. You don't understand the market. Irrelevant." The word hung in the air like smoke. I looked at the 3 of them. Serena, the predator, gorging herself on a lifestyle she hadn't earned. Victoria, the parasite, happy to feed off the scraps. And Julian, the enabler, the hollow man who had sold his spine for a quiet life. They were eating food bought with my dividends, sitting in chairs upholstered with my capital, drinking wine aged in a cellar I had built, and they were discussing my banishment as if I were an unruly dog. "Very well," I said that I placed my napkin on the table. I didn't tremble. I didn't argue. I didn't raise my voice. I understand completely, I continued, pushing my chair back. You need the house to be perfect. You need to control the environment. I will move to the basement tonight. Serena's face lit up with triumph. Oh, thank you, Elias. I knew you'd get it eventually. Honestly, it's warmer down there anyway. Cozy. Yes, I said, standing up and reaching for my cane. Cozy. I walked toward the hallway, the tap, tap, tap of my cane echoing on the hardwood. Oh, and Dad, Julian called out, a hint of guilt in his voice. We can bring you down a plate of leftovers later. I stopped. I didn't turn around. I reached up to my ear and audibly clicked the switch on my hearing aid to the OFF position. A high-pitched feedback whine filled the room for a split second before silence took over. I kept walking. I didn't go to the basement. Not yet. I went to the library, the one room they rarely entered because it smelled of old paper and didn't have a television. I closed the heavy mahogany door and locked it. The silence was absolute. I walked over to the grandfather clock in the corner, a Temperance and Company masterpiece from 1890. It had stopped ticking weeks ago. Neglected. I opened the glass face. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the brass winding key I kept on my keychain. Click, click, click. I wound the weights. I set the pendulum swinging. Tick, tock, tick, tock. The heartbeat of the house returned. They wanted me irrelevant? They wanted me invisible? I walked to the desk and pulled out the red leather folio where I kept the Doomsday Protocol. It was a checklist I had drafted 5 years ago, after Serena had accidentally donated Martha's jewelry to charity. I had hoped never to use it. I took a fountain pen from the stand. Item 1. Credit freeze. Status. Initiated. Item 2. Asset liquidation. Vehicles. Status. Pending. Item 3. Utility audit. Status. Pending. I drew a line through Item 1. The ink was dark and permanent. Julian had made his choice. He wanted to be the brand? Fine. I would show him exactly what happens when the financial backing of a brand is removed. I would show him the difference between a CEO and a mascot. I looked at the phone on the desk. It was time to call the leasing company. Good evening, I whispered to the empty room. This is Elias Sterling. Account number 774 Bravo X-Ray. I'd like to report a breach of contract regarding the vehicles at my residence. The audit was no longer passive. It was active enforcement. The morning sun hit the glass walls of the house with a glare that felt judgmental. Inside, the air smelled of burning white sage and high-grade anxiety. I was sitting in the kitchen my last hour before my scheduled banishment to the basement, watching Serena coordinate the chaos. She was wearing a beige linen jumpsuit that looked like a potato sack but likely cost as much as a Honda Civic. The orchids, she barked into her phone, pacing around the island. I need the Phalaenopsis wall installed by noon. If the petals are even slightly bruised, I'm not paying. She hung up and turned to me. Elias, move your tea. The staging crew is coming to photograph the breakfast nook concept. I picked up my mug. Of course, wouldn't want a geriatric drinking Earl Grey to ruin the wellness aesthetic. Exactly, she said, missing the sarcasm entirely. She grabbed her keys, the heavy fob of the G-Wagon. I'm going to Botanical Lux to pay the deposit. For $1,000 for flowers that will die in 3 days. It's an investment in the brand. An investment, I murmured. Drive safely. She didn't answer. She just swept out of the room, leaving a trail of expensive perfume in her wake as soon as the front door slammed. I moved that I didn't go to the basement. I went to the garage, climbed into my 2011 sedan, the one they called the eyesore, and drove to the town center. I parked in front of First National Bank. This wasn't online banking. This required a performance. I walked in, leaning heavily on my cane, letting my hand tremble as I approached the counter. The teller was a young woman named Sarah, who had known me for years but only saw the frail old man version of me. "Mr. Sterling," she smiled warmly. "How is the hip?" "Oh, it's a bit stiff today, Sarah," I said, voice wavering. "But that's not why I'm here. I'm very worried." "Worried? About what?" I pulled out my ID and laid it on the counter. I think someone has stolen my credit card information. The black card, the one with the heavy limit." Sarah's eyes widened. "Oh no, did you see a transaction?" "I saw flowers," I whispered, looking around as if the thief might be listening. "Thousands of dollars in flowers, and lumber, and crystals?" "I didn't buy any of that, Sarah. I'm on a fixed income." "That sounds like identity theft," she said, her fingers flying across her keyboard. "Let me pull up the account." She frowned at the screen. "Mr. Sterling, there are a lot of pending charges here. High-end furniture, catering deposits, a florist. Nearly $20,000 in the last week." I put a hand to my chest, feigning shock. "20,000? Oh my God, I can't pay that. I don't know what to do." "Don't worry," she said soothingly. "We can stop this right now. I can flag the card as stolen. It will decline any transaction immediately and alert the merchant to confiscate the physical card if it's presented." "Please," I said, looking her in the eye. "Protect me, Sarah." "Done," she said, hitting the enter key with a decisive clack. "The account is frozen. The fraud team will open an investigation." I walked out of the bank 5 minutes later. The sun felt warmer now, and I drove home, taking the scenic route along the cliffs. When I pulled into the driveway, I saw the G-Wagon parked crookedly near the front steps. The driver's side door was open. Inside, the house was vibrating with rage. It was humiliating. Serena's voice shrieked from the living room. "Do you hear me, Julian? Humiliating." I walked in, tapping my cane rhythmically. Serena was standing in the center of the room, her face a blotchy red. Julian was cowering on the sofa. "What happened?" I asked, keeping my voice mild. Serena spun around. "The card, the black Amex. I tried to pay for the orchid wall and the machine beeped. It said declined. And then the cashier called the manager. And he came over and cut the card in half right in front of the other customers. He said it was reported stolen." She threw the pieces of the black plastic onto the coffee table. "He treated me like a criminal, Elias, like a common thief." I looked at the jagged plastic shards. "Stolen? That's strange." "Strange? It's a disaster," she screamed. "I had to write a personal check, and now I have to transfer money from the business account to cover it, which messes up my liquidity for the catering." "I did go to the bank this morning," I said slowly, scratching my head. "I noticed some odd charges. Crystals, timber. I thought maybe I had been hacked. You know, these internet scammers are very clever." "You?" Serena froze. Her eyes bulged. "You reported it stolen?" "I reported fraud." I corrected her gently. "I told them I didn't recognize $20,000 in charges. Because surely you wouldn't spend that much of my retirement savings without asking me. Would you, Serena?" The room went dead silent. Julian looked at me, his face pale. He knew. He knew exactly whose money they had been burning. "It's not your retirement savings," Serena hissed, stepping closer, her voice dropping to a venomous whisper. "It's family money. It's the trust. And you just embarrassed me in front of the most exclusive florist in Oregon." Fraud is a serious crime, Serena, I said, meeting her gaze with a sudden momentary clarity that made her blink. The bank takes it very seriously. They freeze everything to protect the victim. Fix it, she demanded. Call them back. Tell them it was a mistake. I need that line of credit for the weekend. I can't, I said, reverting to the confused old man. Once the fraud investigation starts, it takes, weeks, maybe months. It's out of my hands. Government regulations, you know? Serena let out a primal scream of frustration and kicked the coffee table. Useless. You are utterly useless. Julian, give me your card. We have to pay the caterers by 5 p.m. or they walk. Julian reached for his wallet, pulling out his platinum card also linked to the trust, but through a different subledger. This one should work. He muttered that. I watched him hand it to her. I didn't say a word. I didn't need to. Because item 1 was just the credit freeze. Item 2 was the lease and asset liquidation. And Julian had just handed her a card that was about to become a very embarrassing piece of plastic. I'll be in the basement, I said, turning away. I wouldn't want to get in the way of your investments. As I descended the stairs, I heard Serena aggressively dialing the catering company. Ah, yes, this is Serena Sterling. I have a new card for the deposit. I closed the basement door and locked it. I sat on the cot and pulled out the red ledger. Item 1. The credit freeze executed. I looked at the clock on the wall. It was 2 p.m. The repo trucks were scheduled for 4:00 p.m. They thought the embarrassment at the florist was the storm. They didn't realize it was just the first drop of rain. The Friday morning mist had burned off, leaving the sky a piercing, unforgiving blue. It was a perfect day for golf, or so Julian thought. I was sitting on the front porch, nursing a cup of lukewarm tea and pretending to read a 3-day-old newspaper. In reality, I was waiting. My internal clock, honed by decades of staking out white-collar criminals, told me the timing was imminent. 9 a.m. sharp. Julian emerged from the house. He looked every inch the successful executive. Pastel polo shirt tucked into cream slacks, aviator sunglasses, and a leather tit-laced bag slung over his shoulder. He was heading to the country club to network with potential investors for Serena's wellness brand, a meeting I knew was mostly an excuse to drink scotch before noon. He walked toward his Porsche Cayenne Turbo GT, a $190,000 machine that roared like a lion and drank fuel like a sailor. Parked next to it was Serena's G-Wagon, glistening in the sun, a tank designed for war zones but used exclusively for Starbucks runs. Julian clicked the unlock button on his fob. The lights flashed. He reached for the handle. Rumble, rumble, hiss. The sound came from the bottom of the driveway, the guttural, mechanical groan of a heavy diesel engine downshifting. Julian froze. He looked down the hill just as a massive flatbed tow truck, painted a stark, industrial white, nosed around the final bend of our driveway. And right behind it, a second tow truck. I took a slow sip of tea. Right on schedule. What the hell? Julian muttered, dropping his golf bag. He marched down the steps. Hey, you can't turn around here. This is private property. The lead truck hissed to a halt, blocking the gate. A burly man with a clipboard and a faded repo cap hopped out. He didn't look at Julian. He looked at the VIN number on the Porsche's dashboard through the windshield. Hey, Julian yelled, his voice cracking. Get away from the car. The driver checked his clipboard. Vehicle ending in 5592. Porsche Cayenne. And he gestured to the second driver who was already backing up toward the G-Wagon. Mercedes G63, ending in 9921. What are you doing? Julian screamed, running up to the man. These aren't for sale. We pay the lease every month. Not anymore, buddy, the driver said, bored. He handed Julian a yellow carbon copy slip. Lease termination order. Issued by the lessor. The lessor. Julian stared at the paper, his hands shaking. The leasing company? No, the driver said, hooking a chain onto the Porsche's front axle. The trust. The vehicle titles are held by the Sterling Preservation Trust. The trustee ordered an immediate liquidation of depreciating assets. Julian went pale. He spun around and saw me sitting on the porch. Dad? He gasped. Dad, stop them. They're taking the cars. I stood up slowly, leaning on my cane, and shuffled down the steps. I looked at the tow truck, then at the Porsche, then at Julian. Liquidation? I asked, my voice trembling with feigned confusion. Oh dear, that sounds serious. It's a mistake, Julian shouted. Tell them, Dad. You're the trustee. Tell them to stop. Well, Julian, I said, adjusting my glasses. I did receive a notification from the accountants yesterday. They mentioned something about trimming the fat. Apparently, the trust's overhead is too high. With the recent expenses regarding the workshop renovation, the algorithm decided to offload non-essential luxury vehicles. Non-essential? Julian sputtered. How am I supposed to get to the club? How is Serena supposed to get the gift bags? The algorithm is very strict, I said, shaking my head sadly. It prioritizes survival over status. A G-Wagon is a terrible investment, son. Loses value the moment you drive it off the lot. Clank. Whir. The winch tightened. The Porsche's front wheels lifted off the gravel. It looked helpless, like a beetle being dragged away by an ant. Serena is going to kill me? Julian whispered, the color draining from his face. She has the Vogue living photographer coming at noon. The G-Wagon was supposed to be in the shot. Perhaps she can pose with the bicycle in the shed. I suggested helpfully. It's very eco-conscious. The second truck was already hoisting the G-Wagon. The driver didn't even wait for Julian to retrieve his sunglasses from the dashboard. Dad, please, Julian begged, gripping my arm. Just call the bank. Unfreeze the lease. I'll pay it back. I swear. I looked at his hand on my arm. The same hand that had waved me away at dinner last night. I can't interfere with the trust's liquidity protocols, Julian. I lied smoothly. It's automated. Besides, didn't you say you wanted to be the brand? A CEO should own his assets, not lease them from his father. I gently removed his hand from my sleeve. This is a lesson in ownership, son. The trucks rumbled to life. We watched in silence as $350,000 worth of German engineering disappeared down the driveway, leaving nothing but tire tracks in the gravel. Julian stood there. His golf bag slumped at his feet, stranded in his own driveway. How am I going to get to the meeting? He whimpered. There's an app for that, I said, turning back to the house. I believe it's called Uber, though you might want to check if your card works first. I closed the front door behind me, shutting out the sight of my son frantically tapping on his phone. Item 2. Asset liquidation executed. Point 2 down. 12 to go. The silence in the house was heavy, broken only by the aggressive whir of the blender as Serena pulverized kale into a sludge she called the Green Goddess. It was Friday morning. The Awaking Your Inner Goddess retreat was scheduled to begin at 4 p.m. tomorrow. By now, the house should have been swarming with the eco-sanctuary cleaning crew, a team of 6 women in organic cotton uniforms who scrubbed the floors with eucalyptus oil and arranged the towels into swans. But the driveway was empty. The vacuum cleaners were silent as I sat at the kitchen island, slowly buttering a piece of burnt toast. My cane rested against the counter. Serena poured the green sludge into a glass jar, checked her watch and frowned. She tapped her foot, a rapid, nervous staccato. "Where are they?" she muttered. "They're usually here by 8. It's 9:30. She pulled out her phone and dialed. I took a bite of toast, the crunch sounding like a gunshot in the tense room. "Hi, this is Elias Sterling," she said, her voice tight with forced politeness. "I'm calling to see where the crew is. We have the pre-retreat deep clean scheduled for today." She paused. Her eyes widened. The politeness evaporated. "What do you mean, removed from the schedule? That's impossible. We have a standing contract." She listened for another moment, her knuckles turning white as she gripped the phone. "Terminated? Who terminated it? Mr. Sterling? Well, yes, he's technically the account holder, but..." She looked at me. If looks could incinerate, I would have been a pile of ash on the bar stool. "Fine," she screamed, and hung up. "You," she hissed, marching over to me. "You canceled the cleaning crew?" I looked up, wiping a crumb from my lip. "The cleaning crew? Oh yes, I believe I spoke to them yesterday." The strict budgeting protocol flagged the service as a luxury. $2,000 a month for cleaning? Your mother has plenty of free time. I thought it would be a good bonding activity for you too. Bonding activity? Serena screeched. She gestured around the kitchen, where construction dust from the workshop demolition had tracked in. "We have VIPs arriving in 24 hours. The bathrooms need to be sanitized. The windows need to be streak-free. I can't do that myself." "Why not?" I asked innocently. "Martha cleaned this house for 30 years. She found it meditative. I am a CEO, Elias. I don't scrub toilets." "Well," I said, taking a sip of tea, "then I suppose you'll have a very dirty retreat. The trust isn't paying for it." Serena stood there, vibrating with rage. She looked at the dust on the floor. She looked at the clock. She realized she had no choice. "Victoria!" she yelled, storming toward the living room. "Mom, get off the couch. We have to clean." 10 minutes later, the show began and I moved to my favorite armchair in the living room, turned on the television to a game show, and settled in through the open archway. I watched Elias Sterling, a woman who claimed to be a high-vibrational being, on her hands and knees, scrubbing the grout in the hallway with a sponge. She was wearing yellow rubber gloves that clashed horribly with her linen jumpsuit. "This is abuse," Victoria shouted from the dining room, where she was half-heartedly dusting the chandelier. "I have carpal tunnel, Serena. I can't hold this duster." "Shut up, Mom, and wipe the crystals," Serena yelled back, sweating profusely. "If this place isn't spotless, the influencers will drag us on TikTok." I turned up the volume on the TV. The host asked, "For $500, this Greek goddess is known as the personification of retribution. Who is Nemesis?" I whispered to myself. I watched Serena dip her sponge into the bucket of soapy water. Her mascara was running. She looked exhausted, broken, and utterly human. It was the first honest work she had done in a decade. "You missed a spot," I called out helpfully, pointing to a smudge on the baseboard near my foot. Serena stopped scrubbing. She looked up at me, sweat dripping down her nose. "I hate you," she whispered. "Hate is a low-vibration emotion." "Serena," I said, turning back to the TV, "better scrub that out too." By 2 p.m., the house smelled of bleach and resentment. Serena had broken 2 nails. Victoria had fainted onto the sofa and refused to move, but the house was clean. "There," Serena panted, standing up and peeling off the gloves. "Done. We survived. We don't need your money, Elias. We can do it ourselves." "I'm proud of you," I said genuinely. "See? Hard work builds character." I'm going to the club, she announced, her voice trembling. I need a massage, a sauna, and a very large martini. And since you stole my car, I have to take the shuttle bus. The shuttle is very reliable. I nodded. Come on, Mom. She kicked Victoria's shin lightly. Get up. We're going to the spa. They gathered their things, purses, sunglasses, yoga mats, and limped out the front door toward the main road where the community shuttle stopped. I watched them go. They looked like refugees from a fashion show, battered but still clinging to their dignity. They were heading to the Blackwood Country Club, the most exclusive sanctuary in the county, a place where they felt safe, superior, and pampered. That I reached for the phone. Item 3. The staff revolt executed. Now for item 4, I dialed the number for the club's general manager, a man named Arthur who owed me a favor from a tax audit back in '98. Arthur, I said when he picked up. It's Elias Sterling. Yes, the hip is healing. Listen, I'm reviewing my membership dues. Yes, I'd like to make a change to the authorized guests list effective immediately. Remove Serena. Remove Victoria. Yes, bar them at the gate. I paused, listening to his hesitation. If they cause a scene, I added, my voice hardening, call the police. Trespassing is trespassing, Arthur. I hung up. Cleaning the toilets was physical labor, but being turned away from the gates of paradise? That was social death. I imagined Serena's face when the gatekeeper, a man she had never bothered to learn the name of, told her she wasn't on the list. I poured myself another cup of tea. The game show was over. It was time for the news. The late afternoon sun cast long, distorted shadows across the marble floor of the foyer. I sat in the high-backed chair near the window, the one Serena had tried to move to the garage yesterday because it blocked the chi flow. I was waiting for the phone to ring. According to my calculation, Serena and Victoria had left the house 40 minutes ago. The community shuttle, a humiliating indignity for a woman who used to drive a G-Wagon, took 15 minutes to reach the Blackwood Country Club, allowing for 5 minutes of walking from the bus stop to the main gate, and perhaps 2 minutes of confused arguing with the guard. The call should be coming now. Ring. I picked up the receiver of the landline before the second trill. Sterling residence. I answered, my voice raspy and slow. Mr. Sterling? It's Arthur down at the club. Arthur? I said, leaning back and closing my eyes to savor the moment. How are things on the links today? Well, we had a bit of a situation at the gate, Elias, Arthur said, his voice lowered as if he were sharing state secrets. Mrs. Sterling, young Mrs. Sterling, that is, and her mother just tried to enter. They were quite insistent. Is that so? Yes. When the guard informed them that their guest privileges had been suspended per the primary member's request, I'm afraid it got a bit loud. Serena demanded to see the board of directors. Victoria. Well, Victoria sat on the curb and refused to move until we brought her a cucumber water. I chuckled, a dry sound that rattled in my chest. And what did you do, Arthur? I went out there myself, Arthur said, sounding pleased. I told them that due to the financial restructuring of the Sterling account, we could no longer extend courtesy access. I told them they were welcome to apply for their own individual memberships, subject to the $50,000 initiation fee and board approval, of course. And Serena tried to hand me her credit card, Arthur said, stifling a laugh. The platinum one. It declined, Elias. Right there in front of the valet staff. She said the chip was broken. I had to ask them to leave the property or I'd be forced to call the sheriff for trespassing. You're a good man, Arthur, I said. I'll see you at the poker game next month. They're walking back, by the way, Arthur added. They tried to call a car, but, well, if the card declined for the membership, I assume it declined for the Uber, too. A walk will do them good, I said. Fresh air. Builds character. I hung up. The Blackwood Country Club was 3 miles away. The road was uphill, winding, and lacked sidewalks. Serena was wearing platform sandals. Victoria was wearing mules. I went to the kitchen and made a pot of coffee. I wanted to be fully awake when they returned. An hour later, the front door opened. It didn't slam this time. It creaked open slowly, as if the person opening it lacked the strength to push it. Serena stumbled in first. Her linen jumpsuit was stained with sweat and road dust. Her hair, usually a structured helmet of blonde waves, was limp and frizzy. She was carrying her sandals in her hand, walking barefoot on the hardwood. Victoria followed, looking like a survivor of a shipwreck. She collapsed onto the nearest ottoman, wheezing. "Water." Victoria gasped. I stood in the kitchen doorway, holding my mug. "Good workout." Serena's head snapped up. Her eyes were red-rimmed, wild. She looked at me with a hatred so pure it was almost beautiful. "You," she croaked. "You banned us." "I adjusted the membership," I corrected. "The trust pays $5,000 a month for that membership, Serena. It's for members. Since you are technically tenants, I didn't think it was appropriate for you to use the facilities on my dime, especially after you sent me to the basement. Everyone saw," she whispered, her voice trembling. "The valet, the tennis pro, the mayor's wife was driving out as we were standing there arguing with the guard. She saw me, Elias. She saw my card decline. The mayor's wife is a terrible gossip." I nodded sympathetically. "I imagine the whole town knows by now. They'll probably think you're having liquidity problems." "We are having liquidity problems," she screamed, throwing her sandals across the room. They hit the wall with a dull thud. "Because of you. My card doesn't work. Julian's card doesn't work. We had to walk 3 miles in the heat." "You have legs," I said simply. "Use them." "I have the retreat tomorrow," she sobbed, sliding down the wall to sit on the floor. "I need to relax. I need to get my facial. I look like a hag." She did look rough. The stress was eating her alive. But I wasn't done. "Speaking of facials," I said, pulling a letter from my cardigan pocket. "This came for you while you were out. It looks like a medical bill." I tossed the envelope onto the floor near her feet. She stared at it. It was from the Aesthetica Medical Group, her dermatologist. "What is this?" She sniffled, tearing it open. She scanned the paper. Her face went from red to a ghostly white. "Cancellation notice?" She read, her voice barely audible. "Policy terminated?" "Oh yes," I said, taking a sip of coffee. "That brings me to the next item on the agenda. Health insurance." Victoria sat up on the ottoman. "What about the insurance?" "It's very expensive," I explained, adopting my forensic auditor tone. "The Family Plan Gold Tier PPO was costing the trust $4,000 a month. Since Julian is no longer favored, and since you two are so focused on natural wellness, I decided to switch the plan." "Switch it to what?" Julian's voice came from the stairs. He had come down, attracted by the screaming. "Individual coverage," I said. "For myself, as a senior citizen, I need good coverage. For the rest of you, I believe the term is self-insured." "You canceled our health insurance?" Julian asked, gripping the banister. "Dad, I have asthma. Serena has appointments. Preventative Botox isn't a medical necessity, Julian." I snapped, my patience thinning. "And as for your asthma, I suggest you stop smoking those cigars on the balcony. It will save you money on inhalers." "This is illegal," Serena shrieked, scrambling to her feet. "You can't just cut us off." We have rights. Actually, I said, turning to walk back to my library. You are adults. Adults buy their own insurance. The free ride is over. I stopped at the door and looked back at them. They were a tableau of misery, dirty, tired, broke, and uninsured. Oh, and Serena, I added. I wouldn't try to go to that facial appointment tomorrow morning. Without insurance, they'll ask for cash up front. And we know how your card situation is. I closed the library door. Item 4. The club ban executed. Item 5. The medical cut initiated. I sat at my desk and opened the laptop. The sun was setting, casting the room in shadow. Tomorrow was the retreat. The influencers were coming. The VIPs were coming. Serena thought the worst was over. She thought she could just tough it out, put on a smile, and fake her way through the weekend to get the cash from the clients. She didn't know about the utilities. She didn't know about the smart home system. I looked at the weather forecast on my screen. Saturday, high of 98 degrees Fahrenheit. Heat advisory. I opened the Nest control panel. Current setting, 72 degree F. I moved the dial. New setting, OFF. I hovered over the lock device button. Let's see how much you sweat, I whispered. Saturday broke with a sunrise that looked like a warning. The sky was a bleached, hazy white, promising a heat that would bake the Oregon clay into brick. By 9 a.m., the temperature outside was 85 degrees. Inside, the house was a hive of frantic, sweaty activity. I was down in the basement, my designated exile zone, sitting on the cot. It was remarkably cool down here, surrounded by concrete and earth. I was wearing a light linen shirt, sipping iced tea from a thermos I had prepared earlier. Upstairs, the floorboards vibrated with the heavy footsteps of panic. The catering truck is here, Serena screamed from the kitchen. Julian, help them load in, and don't let them track mud on the white runners. I opened my laptop. The Smart Home Manager dashboard was glowing on the screen. Zone 1, living room 74 degrees Fahrenheit. Zone 2, master suite 72 degrees Fahrenheit. Zone 3, kitchen 76 degree F. The guests, the influencers, the goddesses, the high-paying clients were due to arrive at noon. Serena needed the house to be an oasis. She needed it to be a cool, Wi-Fi-enabled sanctuary where people could post videos of themselves finding inner peace. I looked at the system override button. Let's turn up the heat on the goddesses. I whispered that I clicked emergency shutdown, HVAC compressor. Then, for good measure, I clicked network, suspend service. The hum of the central air conditioning, a sound so constant you only notice it when it stops, cut out instantly. The silence that followed was heavy. I waited 1 minute, 2 minutes. Why is the music off? Serena's voice drifted down through the vents. The Spotify playlist stopped. The Wi-Fi is down, Julian yelled back. My phone just switched to 5G. The router is flashing red. Fix it, she shrieked. We have the live stream at 1 p.m. I can't stream on data. The signal in this canyon is garbage. I took a sip of tea. The signal wasn't garbage. The house had a commercial-grade mesh network. Or it did, until I revoked the MAC addresses of every device except my laptop. 10 minutes later, the temperature began to creep up. The glass walls of the house, usually a stunning architectural feature, were now acting as a giant greenhouse. The sun beat down on the floor-to-ceiling windows, trapping the heat inside. I heard the basement door rattle. It was locked from my side, but they pounded on it. Dad, Julian shouted. Dad, are you down there? The breaker tripped or something. The AC is dead. I didn't answer. I put my headphones on noise canceling and played a little Mozart. By 11 a.m. The house was a kiln. I checked the dashboard sensors. Living room, 84 degrees Fahrenheit. Kitchen, 88 degree F. I decided to go upstairs for a glass of water. I unlocked the door and shuffled into the kitchen. The scene was apocalyptic. The grazing table, a spread of artisanal cheeses and expensive chocolates, was sweating. The brie was running off the slate board. The chocolate truffles were losing their structural integrity. Serena was standing in front of the Nest thermostat on the wall, stabbing the screen with her finger. Her hair was pulled back in a severe bun, but damp tendrils were escaping, plastered to her forehead. "It says eco mode locked," she screamed, hitting the glass. "What is eco mode? Why won't it go down?" "Oh, hello," I said, leaning on my cane. "Is it a bit warm in here?" "The AC is broken." Serena spun around, eyes wild. "And the internet is gone. And the smart fridge screen is black. Everything is breaking." I walked over to the thermostat and peered at it through my spectacles. "Ah," I said, "eco mode. That's a power-saving feature. The utility company installs it when the bill hasn't been paid." "The bill?" Julian dropped a box of kale chips. "The trust pays the bill. The trust reviews the bills," I corrected. "And with the energy prices spiking, and the excessive usage from your workshop renovation, the algorithm must have flagged the account for a service pause until the arrears are cleared." "Pay it," Serena yelled. "Pay it now. People are coming in an hour." "I can't," I said, holding up my hands helplessly. "It's Saturday. The utility offices are closed. And without the internet, I can't even log in to check the balance." Serena looked like she was going to vomit. She looked at the melting cheese. She looked at her armpits, checking for sweat marks on her beige jumpsuit. "Open the windows," she commanded Julian. "Get a cross breeze." "You can't," I pointed out. "The windows are electronically sealed for security. The smart home system controls them, and since the system is offline, they were trapped in a glass box." "This is sabotage," Victoria moaned from the corner, fanning herself with a paper plate. "I'm going to have a heat stroke." "I have a condition, Elias. The basement is quite cool," I offered. 58 degrees. Very refreshing. But, of course, that space is reserved for low vibration storage. Serena glared at me. She knew. Somewhere, deep down in her lizard brain, she knew I was doing this. But she couldn't prove it, and she didn't have time to argue. Ding dong. The old-fashioned doorbell rang. The electronic chime was dead. "They're here?" Serena whispered, horror dawning on her face. She ran to the window. "It's the influencers, the Soul Sisters. They have 2 million followers." She turned to Julian. "Do I look sweaty? Do I look glowing or sweaty?" "You look moist," Julian said unhelpfully. Just get them drinks. Lots of ice." She ran to the freezer. She yanked the handle. Warm air puffed out. "The ice maker," she whimpered. "It's off." I smiled. "The smart fridge, also connected to the grid." Serena stood there, holding a bag of half-melted ice cubes, water dripping onto her expensive sandals. "Welcome to the retreat," I said softly as I turned and walked back toward the basement stairs. "I'll be downstairs if you need me, though with the soundproofing, I probably won't hear you screaming." I closed the door behind me and locked it. Item 6. The utilities executed. Now the stage was set. The audience had arrived. The actors were sweating. The props were melting. It was time for the main event. The heat in the living room had become a physical weight, pressing down on the goddesses with suffocating force. It was 89 degrees indoors that I was in the basement, monitoring the situation via the old baby monitor system I had rigged up years ago. It was audio only, but the soundscape was vivid enough. I can't believe there's no ice. A voice whined, probably Chakra Chloe, the influencer with the 2 million followers. My lymphatic system is literally swelling up in this heat. It's toxic. I'm so sorry. Serena's voice was high and frantic, cracking at the edges. The repairman he's stuck in traffic. He'll be here any minute. Here, have a lukewarm cucumber water. It opens the pores. I'm leaving, Chloe announced. This isn't a retreat. It's a sauna, and not the good kind. I can't post this. My followers will think I'm in a hostel. No, please, Serena begged. We have the sound bath at 2 o'clock. The acoustics are amazing. It smells like cheese, Chloe snapped. And failure. I heard the sound of footsteps marching out, followed by the heavy thud of the front door. Julian, Serena shrieked. Do something. Fix the internet. Call the power company again. I can't, Julian yelled back. My phone is dead, Serena, and I can't stay here. I'm going to the office. The office? Now? I have to access the corporate accounts. Julian lied, his voice thin. I need to wire money to the AC guy directly. The personal accounts are frozen. Remember? I have to use the company discretionary fund. It was a desperate lie. I knew it. He knew it. He just wanted to get into an air-conditioned building and hide from his wife. Fine, Serena screamed. Go. Just get the money. Fix this. I heard Julian scramble out the door. I sat back on my cot and checked the time. 1:15 p.m. Perfect. Julian would take an Uber paid for with a prepaid Visa card he likely bought at the gas station to the headquarters of Sterling Holdings. Sterling Holdings was a boutique investment firm. Julian held the title of CEO. He had a corner office, a mahogany desk, and a plaque that said visionary. What he didn't have was ownership. I picked up my burner phone and dialed a number I hadn't called in 3 years. Security desk. This is Miller. Miller, I said, dropping the frail old man act. It's Elias. Mr. Sterling. Miller's voice straightened up. Good to hear from you, sir. How's retirement? Active, I said. Miller, my son is on his way to the building. He's coming to access funds. I need you to initiate Protocol 7. There was a pause. Miller knew Protocol 7. I had written the security manual myself. Protocol 7. Are you sure, sir? That's hostile termination. I'm sure, I said. His access is revoked effective immediately. If he tries to enter the elevator, you know what to do. Understood, sir. I'll have his box ready. I hung up and switched back to the baby monitor. The house was quiet, save for Serena sobbing softly in the kitchen. 30 minutes later, my burner phone buzzed. It was a text from Miller. Target on sight. I closed my eyes and visualized the scene. Julian stepped out of the Uber, sweating and disheveled. He smoothed his polo shirt, put on his sunglasses, and walked toward the glass doors of the Sterling building. This was his sanctuary, the one place where he was the boss. The place where the AC was set to a crisp 68 degrees. He walked to the turnstiles and slapped his ID badge against the reader. Beep, beep, beep. Red light. He frowned. He tried again. Beep, beep, beep. Damn it, he muttered. He walked over to the security desk. Miller, hey, my badge is acting up. Must be the heat. Uzz me in, will you? Miller, a man who had bounced Julian on his knee as a toddler, didn't smile. He stood behind the high marble counter, arms crossed. I can't do that, Mr. Sterling. What do you mean? Julian laughed nervously. It's me, the CEO. Just open the gate. I'm afraid your clearance has been revoked, sir, Miller said, sliding a cardboard box across the counter. Julian stared at the box. Inside was a stapler, a framed photo of Serena, and his stress ball. Revoked. Julian's voice rose an octave. Who revoked it? I run this company. The chairman of the board revoked it, Miller said, his face stony. Emergency session held this morning via teleconference. Resolution 104, removal of CEO for gross negligence and misappropriation of company assets. Misappropriation. Julian sputtered. I didn't. The company lease on the Porsche, Miller read from a sheet of paper. The business expenses for the home renovation. The landscaping bills charged to the facilities maintenance ledger. It's all here, sir. Julian gripped the counter. My father, he did this. The chairman asked me to give you a message, Miller said. He leaned forward. He said, the invisible bank is closed, Julian. Try the vending machine. Julian stood there, the cool air of the lobby washing over him, but he couldn't step inside. He was on the outside looking in. The glass doors were the only things separating him from his identity, but they might as well have been a prison wall. You can't do this, Julian shouted, slamming his hand on the turnstile. I am Sterling Holdings. Not anymore, Miller said, reaching for his radio. Sir, I have instructions to call the police if you cause a disturbance. Please take your box and leave the premises. Julian looked at the box. He looked at the guard. He looked at the elevator that led to his office. He grabbed the box. Back in the basement, I took a slow breath. I could feel the vibration of the text message arriving on my phone. Subject has left the building. Item 7. The career death executed. Julian was no longer a CEO. He was just an unemployed man with a box of junk, standing on a sidewalk in the heat, waiting for an Uber he couldn't afford. He would be coming back to the house soon. He would be angry. He would be desperate. And he would find that the house was no longer a sanctuary. It was a pressure cooker. I looked at my list. Item 8. The business audit, Serena. Julian was broken. Now it was time to break the queen. I opened the file labeled IRS Form 3949A.PDF. Information referral suspected tax fraud. Serena Sterling Interiors LLC. Status: non-profit wellness initiative. Reality: for-profit luxury scam. Did I hit submit? Checkmate in 3 moves. I whispered. The heat inside the house had settled into a thick, suffocating blanket. It was 92 degrees in the foyer. The sage tranquility. Paint on the walls seemed to be peeling in the humidity. I was sitting in the living room, fanning myself with a folded newspaper, watching the front door. The few remaining guests, 2 micro-influencers, who were too polite to leave, were huddled on the patio, whispering and frantically trying to get cell service. 3:45 p.m. The front door opened. Julian didn't walk in, he shambled. This pastel polo shirt was dark with sweat. He was carrying a cardboard box that looked heavy with the weight of failure. He had walked the 3 miles from the office. Serena, who had been pacing the hallway like a caged tiger, pounced on him immediately. Where have you been? She shrieked. The caterer just left. He took the food, Julian. He said the check bounced. I have guests eating protein bars I found in the pantry. She grabbed his arm, shaking him. Did you get the money? Did you transfer the funds from the corporate account? Julian didn't answer. He just let the cardboard box slide from his fingers. It hit the floor with a hollow thud. The stapler spilled out. The framed photo of Serena smiling, retouched, perfect, landed face down on the marble. Julian, Serena stepped back, looking at the box. Why do you have your things? I'm fired, Julian whispered. His voice was cracked, dry as the desert outside. Fired. Serena laughed. a high, hysterical sound. "You can't be fired. You're the CEO. Your name is on the building." "Dad," Julian said, lifting his head to look at me. "Dad is the chairman. He fired me." Serena spun around to face me. I was checking my watch, looking bored. "You," she choked on the word. "You fired your own son?" "Gross negligence," I said calmly. "Embezzlement of company funds for personal luxury vehicles." The board was unanimous. "It's a tragedy, really, but business is business." "You monster!" she screamed, her face twisting into something ugly. "He has a family. He has a mortgage. Actually," I corrected, "he has a lease, which is currently in default." "We need money," she yelled. "I have people here. I have a reputation. If this retreat fails, I'm ruined." She grabbed her purse and dug out her laptop, a sleek MacBook Pro. "I don't need you," she spat. "I don't need Julian. I built Elias Sterling Interiors from the ground up. I have capital. I have retained earnings." She slapped the laptop open on the dining table. "I'm going to transfer $50,000 from my business operating account to pay the vendors and get the AC fixed. I'll hire a private generator if I have to." I took a slow sip of my warm water. "I wouldn't do that if I were you, Serena." "Shut up," she typed furiously. "You think you can control everything? You can't touch my business. It's an LLC. It's separate." "Is it?" I asked. "Do you remember how you funded the startup costs 5 years ago? The initial $100,000. It was a seed investment," she muttered, her eyes glued to the screen as she logged into her business banking portal. "From a private angel investor." "Yes," I nodded. "An angel investor operating under the name Aurora Holdings." She froze. Her finger hovered over the trackpad. "Aurora Holdings," I continued, "is a subsidiary of the Sterling Preservation Trust. I am the sole signatory." "So what?" she sneered. "It was an investment. It was a callable loan," I said softly. "Structure B. Callable on demand if the business engages in unethical practices or fails to meet solvency requirements." She stared at the screen. Her face went slack. "Where is it?" she whispered. I stood up and walked over to stand behind her. I looked at the screen. Account balance, $0. Transaction history, today, 12:01 p.m. Wire transfer out $112,400. Principal plus interest. Recipient, Aurora Holdings/Sterling Trust. "You took it," she breathed. "You took it all." I recalled the loan. I said, "You were using business funds to pay for personal groceries and hair appointments. That's commingling of assets, Serena. Is a breach of contract. And, quite frankly, bad accounting." "That was my money," she screamed, slamming the laptop shut. "I worked for that." "You networked for it," I corrected. "You threw parties with it. You bought crystals with it. You never actually earned a profit, did you? The business has been operating at a loss for 3 years. I just pulled the plug before you bled the trust dry." Julian was sitting on the floor next to his box of office supplies, head in his hands. He didn't say a word. He knew. He knew the game was over. But Serena wasn't done. She was a fighter, I'll give her that. A cornered, delusional fighter. "I still have the house," she hissed, her eyes darting around the room. "We can sell it. We can sell the house and take the equity. It's worth $4 million. I started to laugh. It began as a chuckle and grew into a deep, belly laugh that hurt my ribs. "Sell the house." I wiped a tear from my eye. "Oh, Serena, you really never read the paperwork, did you?" I reached into the inside pocket of my cardigan and pulled out a folded document. It was thick, bound in blue paper. This, I said, dropping it onto the table next to her dead laptop, is the deed. She stared at it. Read the name on the title, Serena. She didn't move. Read it, I commanded, my voice snapping like a whip. She opened the cover with trembling fingers. Owner of record, the Sterling Preservation Trust. Trustee, Elias Sterling. Beneficiaries, none listed. You don't own the house, I said, leaning in close so she could smell the peppermint tea on my breath. You don't own the furniture. You don't own the cars. You don't own the business. You don't even own the shirt on your back, because I paid the credit card bill for that, too. You are guests, I whispered, and guests can be evicted. As if on cue, the sound of a heavy vehicle crunching up the gravel driveway broke the silence. It wasn't a repo truck this time. It was a black sedan with government plates, and behind it, a sheriff's cruiser. Ah, I said, straightening my tie. Item 10 appears to be early. Serena looked out the window. Who is that? That, I said, checking my watch, is the IRS Criminal Investigation Division and the county sheriff. Why? She whimpered. Because, I said, walking toward the door to greet them. I may have mentioned to my old colleagues that there were some irregularities in your tax filings regarding the non-profit status of your retreat. I opened the front door. The heat rushed in, but it was nothing compared to the fire I had just lit. Good afternoon, gentlemen, I called out cheerfully. The files are on the dining room table, and the suspects are in the kitchen. The heat in the foyer seemed to drop 10 degrees the moment Special Agent Graves stepped across the threshold. He was a man made of right-angle square jaw, square shoulders, and a suit that didn't wrinkle, even in this humidity. Behind him, two other agents wearing blue windbreakers emblazoned with IRS CID fanned out into the hallway. The sheriff stood by the door, hand resting casually on his belt, his eyes scanning the room with the detached boredom of a man who had seen everything. Mrs. Serena Sterling, Agent Graves asked. His voice was flat, devoid of inflection. It was the voice of a man who read spreadsheets for fun. Serena stood by the dining table, her hands trembling over her closed laptop. She looked like a cornered animal, sweaty, disheveled, and terrifyingly aware that her manifestation board hadn't included a federal raid. I am Serena, she stammered. Who are you? You can't just barge in here. We are in the middle of a crisis. We know, Graves said, pulling a folded document from his jacket pocket. We're here to add to it. I have a warrant for the seizure of business records and physical assets related to the Sterling Wellness Initiative, 501c3. Seizure. Julian squeaked from the floor. He scrambled to his feet, wiping his sweaty palms on his pants. Officer, there must be a mistake. My wife runs an interior design firm. It's a limited liability company. According to her tax filings for the last 3 years, Graves said, glancing at the paper, she has been operating as a tax-exempt religious and educational organization. The stated mission, promoting spiritual solvency through aesthetic minimalism, cleared my throat from the corner. Spiritual solvency, I murmured. Catchy. Graves turned his gaze to Serena. Mrs. Sterling, the IRS takes a dim view of nonprofits that spend 90% of their donations on. He consulted a second sheet of paper. Aesthetic research vehicles, specifically a Mercedes G-Wagon and somatic therapy sessions at the Four Seasons Spa. Serena's face went from white to a blotchy, defensive red. That is part of the brand. I have to embody the lifestyle to sell the lifestyle. It's overhead. It's tax fraud, Graves corrected. And since you listed your primary residence as the headquarters of this church, we are authorized to secure all assets on the premises to satisfy the federal tax lien. Lien, Serena whispered. How much? $340,000, Graves said, plus penalties, plus interest. He signaled to the agents behind him. Start with the home office, then the master suite. No, Serena lunged forward as an agent moved toward the stairs. You can't go up there. My jewelry is in there. My bags. Proceeds of crime, Graves said calmly, stepping in her way. If they were purchased with funds diverted from the nonprofit, they are government property. Julian, do something, she shrieked. Call the lawyer. Call Daddy. Julian looked at the sheriff, then at the IRS agents, then at me. He looked like a man waking up from a long, expensive dream. I can't call anyone, Serena, he said hollowly. My phone is off. And I think Dad is the one who called them. Serena spun around to face me. I was sitting in the high-backed chair, sipping my water. You reported me? She hissed. You did this? You audited your own family? I audited a criminal enterprise operating under my roof. I corrected gently. I have a duty as a citizen, Serena, and as a former federal auditor, I simply couldn't ignore the irregularities. Writing off a trip to Tulum as missionary work? Bold. Very bold. I hate you, she sobbed. I hate you. Mrs. Sterling, step back, the sheriff warned, taking a step forward. Let them take it, I said to the room. The furniture in the office is mostly reproductions anyway. But, I paused, looking at Agent Graves. If you're looking for the high-value items, you might want to check the false panel in the walk-in closet. Behind the shoe rack, that's where the cash reserves are kept. Undeclared, of course. Serena gasped. How did you know about that? I tapped the side of my head. The walls are thin, Serena, and you talk very loudly when you're counting money. Graves nodded to his team. Check the closet. For the next hour, the house was filled with the sounds of a life being dismantled. Drawers were pulled out. Boxes were filled. The agents moved with efficient, brutal precision. They brought down the investments, the Birkin bags, the Cartier watches, the diamond tennis bracelet she had bought for her birthday month. They laid them out on the dining table, tagging each one with a yellow sticker. Victoria, who had been hiding in the powder room, finally emerged. She saw the pile of luxury goods and let out a wail that sounded like a dying cat. My pearls, she cried, rushing toward the table. Those are mine. Serena gave them to me for Christmas, gifted with illicit funds, the agent said, blocking her hand. Bag it. This is robbery, Victoria screamed. I am an elderly woman. You can't leave me with nothing. You have your health, I pointed out helpfully. Oh wait, no insurance. Well, you have your freedom. For now. Serena slumped against the wall, sliding down until she hit the floor. She watched as an agent carried out her iMac, the brain of her business, containing her client list, her designs, her entire digital life. My retreat, she whispered. My brand. Your brand is currently being seized as evidence, Graves said. He walked over to her and handed her a receipt. This is an inventory of seized items. You will receive a summons for a court appearance regarding the tax evasion charges. He turned to me. Mr. Sterling, thank you for your cooperation. We'll be in touch regarding the trust's liability. But since you self-reported and provided the forensic trail proving you were unaware of the misappropriation, you're in the clear. Thank you, Agent Graves, I said. Justice is its own reward. The agents filed out, carrying the boxes. The sheriff tipped his hat to me and followed them. The front door closed. The house was quiet again, but it was a different kind of quiet. It wasn't the silence of peace. It was the silence of a tomb. The heat was still oppressive. The dining table was empty. The sanctuary had been stripped. Serena sat on the floor, staring at the empty space where her computer had been. Julian stood by the window, watching the government cars drive away. "What do we do now?" Julian asked, his voice trembling. "We have no money, no jobs, no cars, and now, no assets." I stood up. My hip ached, but I felt lighter than I had in years. I asked. Julian turned to look at me. "Dad, come on. We're family. We can fix this. We can start over." "Start over?" I shook my head. "I suppose you can, Julian, but you won't be doing it here." I reached into my pocket and pulled out the final document, the one I had been saving for the curtain call. "The sheriff was kind enough to serve this while he was here," I said. Holding up the papered IT was a bright orange notice. "Notice to quit, termination of tenancy at will. Time remaining, 24 hours. You have until sunset tomorrow," I said, placing the notice on the empty dining table. "I suggest you start packing." Though looking around, I gestured to the empty shelves and the seized goods. "You don't have much left to pack." Item 9. The tax raid executed. Item 10. The eviction served. I turned and walked toward the hallway. "I'm going to my workshop," I said over my shoulder. "I have a clock to fix. Try not to make too much noise while you leave. I like the quiet." The sun had long since set, leaving the house in a profound, suffocating darkness. With the power still cut and the smart home system dead, the glass walls that usually showcased the ocean view now just reflected the interior desolation. I was in my workshop, the only room with light, thanks to the battery-powered marine lanterns I kept for emergencies. I had dragged a chair to the center of the stripped floor, sitting amidst the oil stains and the ghost outlines of where my workbenches used to be. I was polishing the brass pendulum I had rescued from the mud. Rub, shine, rub, shined at 2 a.m. The door creaked open. "Dad." It was Julian. He held a flashlight, one of the cheap plastic ones from the emergency kit in the kitchen. The beam shook as he directed it at his feet. "It's bright in here," he muttered, shielding his eyes from my lanterns. "I prepared," I said, not looking up. "The Coast Guard recommends redundancy in lighting systems. Unlike your wife, who relies on ambient mood lighting." Julian stepped fully into the room. He looked wrecked. His polo shirt was unbuttoned, his face covered in stubble. He dragged a suitcase behind him, one of the few they had managed to pack before the agents took the Louis Vuitton sets. We can't sleep," he said, his voice cracking. "It's 90 degrees in the house. Serena she's not doing well." "Tragic?" I said, checking the pendulum for scratches. Julian let go of the suitcase and slumped against the wall. "Dad, please. I know you're angry. I know we messed up. But the eviction, the IRS, this too much. You've destroyed us." I stopped polishing. I placed the brass disc on my knee and looked at my son. "I didn't destroy you, Julian. I just turned on the lights. You were the ones who built a life you couldn't afford. We were trying to build a legacy," he argued, though the fight had left him. "Serena has vision. She just needed time. She had 5 years," I said coldly, "and $3 million of my money. Do you know what she built? A tax lien and a pile of debt." "But I'm your son," he whispered. "Doesn't that count for anything?" I stood up. My hip popped, a sharp reminder of my frailty, but I ignored it. I walked over to a metal filing cabinet, the only piece of furniture Serena hadn't been able to move because it was bolted to the studs. The counts, I said. That is why you are not in handcuffs right now. The IRS wanted to charge you as a co-conspirator. I convinced them you were merely incompetent. Julian flinched that I pulled a thick folder from the cabinet. Do you remember 2010? I asked, tossing the folder onto a crate. You graduated college. I bought you a condo in the city, fully paid off. A starter home. We sold it, Julian mumbled. You sold it to fund Serena's European sabbatical. I corrected. Price, $450,000. Gone in 6 months. I pulled another file. 2015. The wedding. I gave you a check for $100,000 to invest in a mutual fund. Where is that? Julian looked at the floor. Serena wanted a destination wedding. The flowers. The venue. Gone. I said that I pulled a third file. 2019. The business loan for Serena's firm. Another $200,000. Plus the monthly stipend. Plus the car leases. Plus the insurance. I stacked the files. They formed a tower of wasted potential. I did the math tonight, Julian, I said, my voice steady and hard. Since you met Serena, the Sterling Trust has expended $4.2 million on your lifestyle. Julian's eyes widened. That can't be right. I am an auditor, I snapped. I do not make rounding errors. $4.2 million. I pointed to the empty workshop. And when I asked you, begged you to save one thing, this room, my wife's memory, you let her sell it for scrap metal. I didn't know, Julian sobbed. I didn't think it mattered to you. That is the problem, I said, stepping closer to him. You didn't think. You just consumed. You are a locust, Julian. You and your wife moving from field to field, stripping it bare. So what happens now? He asked, wiping his nose with the back of his hand. We have nothing. The accounts are zero. The cars are gone. We have to be out by sunset tomorrow. Where do we go? I reached into my pocket and pulled out an envelope. It was plain white, standard business size. I anticipated this, I said, holding it out. Julian grabbed it, hope flickering in his eyes. Is this money? A check? Open it. He tore the seal. His fingers shook as he pulled out the contents. It wasn't a check. It was 3 tickets. Greyhound? He read, confused. Bus tickets. One way. I confirmed. To Spokane. Spokane? Why Spokane? Because that is where Serena's sister lives, I said. The one she hasn't spoken to in 5 years because she lives in a trailer park. Called her. She said you can sleep on her couch for 2 weeks. After that, you're on your own. Dad, you can't be serious, Julian gasped. Spokane it's a 6-hour bus ride. We have luggage. Then you better pack light, I said, turning back to my chair. The bus leaves from the depot at 8 a.m. You have 4 hours to walk there. Walk, Julian shouted. It's 10 miles. You walked 3 miles yesterday, I said, picking up my polishing cloth. You're getting in shape. It's good for the wellness brand. I'm not doing it. Serena's voice shrieked from the doorway. She stood there, illuminated by the spill of the lantern light. She looked like a wraith, hair matted, makeup smeared, wearing a wrinkled silk robe. I am not getting on a bus, she screamed, stomping into the room. I am Serena Sterling. I do not ride public transit. Then you can walk to Spokane, I said without looking up. Though I imagine the heels will be uncomfortable. You have money, she yelled, advancing on me. I know you do. You have millions in that trust. Give us a severance. Give us $10,000. just enough to get a hotel and a rental car. I looked at her, really looked at her. The mask of beauty had slipped completely, revealing the greedy, frightened child underneath. A severance. I mused. That implies you were employed. You weren't employees, Serena. You were parasites. I will sue you, she spat. I will tell everyone what you did. Elder abuse. Emotional distress. Go ahead, I said. Tell them. Tell the judge. Tell the IRS agent who is currently auditing your tax returns. I'm sure they'll be very sympathetic to the woman who bought a G-Wagon with charity funds. Serena froze. She knew I had her. She was legally toxic. Get out, I said quietly. What? Get out of my workshop. I raised my voice, the sound echoing off the bare walls. Get out of my house. The eviction notice gave you 24 hours, but my patience has expired now. But the bus, Julian stammered. Start walking, I said, or I call the sheriff back. I believe he mentioned something about trespassing after notification. Serena looked at Julian. Julian looked at Serena. For the first time, I saw them look at each other with pure, unadulterated loathing. They realized they were stuck with each other, with nothing but a bus ticket and a shared debt. Serena turned and ran out of the room, sobbing. Julian lingered for a second, looking at me one last time. Goodbye, Dad, he whispered. Goodbye, Julian, I said. Don't forget to write. He left. I sat alone in the silence. I picked up the brass pendulum. I held it up to the light. It shone like gold. Item 11. The eviction enforced. Item 12. The severance package, bus tickets. Delivered. I blew out the lantern. The darkness was absolute. But for the first time in months, I slept soundly. The sun rose over Blackwood Bluffs at 5:45 a.m., painting the sky in shades of bruised purple and angry orange. The heat wave hadn't broken. The air was already thick enough to chew. I stood on the second-floor balcony of the master suite, the room I had been banned from for 3 days. I had reclaimed it an hour ago, stripping the bed of Serena's organic bamboo sheets and throwing them into the trash. I held a pair of binoculars. I wasn't bird watching. I was pest watching. Below, on the long, winding gravel driveway, the exodus had begun. It was a pathetic parade. Leading the pack was Julian. He was dragging 2 heavy suitcases, the ones the IRS hadn't seized because they contained only clothes. The wheels of the suitcases were designed for airport terminals, not crushed rock. They jittered and snagged, twisting his wrist with every step. He had stripped off his polo shirt and was walking in a stained undershirt, his skin already turning pink in the morning sun. 10 paces behind him was Serena. She was wearing oversized sunglasses and a wide-brimmed hat, attempting to look like a celebrity dodging paparazzi. But the illusion was shattered by the fact that she was limping. She had refused to change out of her platform wedges, likely because she had no other shoes left that weren't seized assets. She carried a tote bag over one shoulder and was furiously typing on her phone, probably trying to find a friend who hadn't blocked her yet. And trailing in the rear, sitting on one of the decorative boulders near the gate, was Victoria. I lowered the binoculars and leaned over the railing. Victoria, I called out. My voice carried easily in the still morning air. The bus leaves in 2 hours. At your current pace, you will miss it. Victoria looked up, shielding her eyes. I can't walk 10 miles, Elias. I'm 65. I have bad knees. I'm 74, I replied, and I have a bad hip. Yet I managed to walk to the bank, the leasing office, and the sheriff's station in the last 2 days. It's amazing what the human body can do when motivated by survival. You're a demon, she shrieked, her voice cracking. You're sending us to our deaths. I'm sending you to Spokane, I corrected. It's hardly a death sentence, though the winters are brisk. I'm not going, she declared, crossing her arms. I'm staying right here. When the police come, I'll tell them you locked me out. I have squatter's rights. I sighed. I had anticipated this. Victoria was the barnacle of the group hardest to scrape off. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone. I dialed the number for the Blackwood taxi service. It was a one-man operation run by a guy named Earl who drove a 1998 Lincoln Town car that smelled of cigars. Earl, I said into the phone, loud enough for her to hear. It's Elias. Yes, I have a passenger for you at the gate. One way to the Greyhound station. Yes, I'll pay the fare in advance. And Earl, don't let her talk. She tells terrible stories. I hung up. Your chariot arrives in 5 minutes, Victoria. I shouted down. Consider it my final gift. Private car, just like you wanted. She glared at me, but she didn't argue. She knew it was the best offer she was going to get. I turned my attention back to Julian and Serena. They had reached the first bend in the road, about a quarter mile down. They had stopped. I raised the binoculars again. They were arguing. I couldn't hear the words, but the body language was forensic evidence in itself. Serena was pointing a finger at Julian's chest. Julian was throwing his hands up. She shoved him. He stumbled back, tripping over his suitcase. It was the end of the power couple. They weren't fighting about the money anymore. They were fighting about blame. Serena was blaming Julian for being weak. Julian was blaming Serena for being greedy. They were eating each other alive. I watched as Julian grabbed his suitcase and started walking again. Faster this time, leaving her behind. Serena stood there for a moment, screaming at his back, before grabbing her tote bag and hobbling after him. They disappeared, around the bend, swallowed by the trees. The driveway was empty. The silence returned. I waited until I saw Earl's rusted Lincoln turn into the gate. I watched Victoria load her bags and get in. I watched the car drive away. Only then did I lower the binoculars. Gone. I whispered. I walked back into the house. The heat was still stifling, but the heaviness was gone. The air felt cleaner. Despite the temperature, I went to the hallway closet, the one where the smart home server rack was installed. I opened the panel. I looked at the nest of blinking red lights. I reached for the main breaker switch labeled HVAC/system reset. I flipped it. Thunk. A deep, mechanical hum reverberated through the walls. The vents overhead hissed as the compressor kicked in. Cool, conditioned air began to flow. I moved to the router. I flipped the switch. Blink, blink, green. The house woke up. The blinds in the living room automatically adjusted to block the glare. The refrigerator hummed to life. The security system beeped, signaling it was armed and online. I walked to the kitchen. I opened the fridge. The ice maker rattled and dropped a fresh batch of cubes into the tray. Clatter. I took a glass, filled it with ice and tap water, and took a long, cold drink. I looked around the kitchen. It was a mess. There were half-packed boxes, trash on the floor, and the lingering smell of desperation. But it was my mess. My phone buzzed. It was a text from the sheriff. Sheriff, saw them walking on County Road 9. Looking rough. Did you really make them walk? I typed back, me. I offered them a severance package. They chose the scenic route. Sheriff, cold, Elias. Cold, me. Just like the AC, Sheriff. Just like the AC. I put the phone down. I had one more call to make. The most important one. I dialed the number for Miller and Sons Restoration, the company owned by the son of my old fishing buddy. Dave, I said when he answered. It's Elias. Yes, the pests are gone. You can bring the crew over. I want the workshop cleared out by noon. And Dave, bring the truck with the winch. I have a clock cabinet I need to retrieve from the dump. I hung up and walked to the window. The ocean looked beautiful today. The fog was gone. The water was a deep, sparkling blue. I wasn't just an old man in a big house anymore. I was the curator, and the exhibition was finally closed to the public. Item 13. The departure confirmed. Item 14. The restoration scheduled. The revenge was complete. Now it was time for the healing. The sound of construction returned to Blackwood Bluffs. But this time, the rhythm was different. It wasn't the chaotic screech of demolition. It was the measured, purposeful thud of restoration. I stood in the driveway, leaning on my cane, watching Dave Miller and his crew unload the flatbed truck. "Careful with that lathe," Dave shouted to his son, a 19-year-old giant named Toby. "That's cast iron, not plastic. Treat it like it's a baby." Toby grunted, lowering the heavy machinery onto the dolly with surprising gentleness. "I got it, Pops. I got it." It had been 48 hours since the exodus. Since then, the house had been scrubbed by a professional hazmat team, my expense to remove the lingering scent of sage tranquility and despair. The white runners were gone. The grazing tables were gone. But the workshop was the priority. Dave walked over, wiping grease from his forehead with a rag. "We managed to salvage about 70% of the tools from the scrapyard, Elias. The guys at the yard knew you. When Serena's crew dropped it off, they put it aside. Said it looked too valuable to crush. Honest men." I nodded. "I'll have to send them a case of scotch. There is one thing, though," Dave said, looking back at the truck. "We found a box in the back of the skip bin. It got rained on pretty bad before we got to it." My heart stuttered. "The sketches," Dave signaled to Toby. The boy jogged over carrying a plastic bin. Inside, sitting on top of a pile of damp sawdust, was a stack of charcoal drawings that I reached in. The paper was warped, the edges stained with water, but the charcoal held. I lifted the top one. It was a sketch of me, sitting in this very driveway, fixing a bicycle chain for Julian when you was 10. Martha had drawn it quickly, capturing the furrow of my brow, the grease on my hands. "They're a bit messy," Dave apologized. "They're perfect," I whispered, my voice thick. "They have texture now. History." I pressed the damp paper to my chest. They hadn't sold a single one. Even the influencers had better taste than to buy stolen memories. "Put the benches back exactly where they were, Dave," I said, clearing my throat. "And the lighting. I want the warm bulbs, not those LED interrogation lights Serena installed." "You got it, Mr. Sterling." As the crew went back to work, a sheriff's cruiser pulled up the driveway. It wasn't the sheriff himself this time, but a deputy I recognized, Deputy Ramirez. He stepped out, holding a manila envelope. "Afternoon, Mr. Sterling," Ramirez said, tipping his hat. "Sheriff asked me to drop this off. It's the incident report from the bus station." "Incident report?" I raised an eyebrow. "Did they miss the bus?" "Oh, they made the bus," Ramirez grinned. "But apparently, Mrs. Sterling, the younger one, got into a bit of a disagreement with the ticket agent. Something about the baggage allowance." I took the envelope. "Do tell. She tried to check 4 oversized bags," Ramirez recounted. "When the agent told her it was $50 extra per bag, she tried to pay with a Nordstrom gift card. When that didn't work, she started screaming that she was a political prisoner and that you were a deep state operative." I chuckled. "Creative." "The driver threatened to leave them," Ramirez continued. "So they had to leave the bags. 3 suitcases of, well, looked like designer clothes, sitting right there on the sidewalk in downtown. And the passengers on board, heading east. Last seen arguing over who got the window seat." "Thank you, deputy," I said. "You've made an old man very happy." Ramirez nodded and drove off. I looked at the report. Disturbance of the peace. Warnings issued. They were gone. They were in the system. They were someone else's problem now. I walked into the workshop. It was empty, save for the newly returned lathe and the workbench. The smell of raw pine and oil was slowly replacing the smell of rain. Toby, the contractor's son, was standing by the workbench, looking at the brass gear I had placed there, the one I had carried in my pocket like a talisman. "This is a escapement gear, isn't it?" Toby asked, not looking up. I stopped. "You know clocks?" "Not really." The boy shrugged, his large hands hovering over the delicate brass teeth. "But I watch videos on YouTube sometimes. Restoration stuff. It looks like a heartbeat. It pushes the time forward, right? It regulates the energy." I corrected gently, stepping closer. "Without it, the spring would unwind all at once. Chaos. The escapement brings order." Toby looked at me. "My dad says you used to catch bad guys with math." "Something like that." I smiled. "That's cool," Toby said. He pointed to the pile of rusted parts in the corner. "You gonna fix all that?" "It's a lot of work for one old man," I admitted, leaning on my cane. "My hands shake a bit more than they used to." Toby hesitated. He looked at the lathe, then at his dad outside, then back to the gear. "I get off work at 4, he said quietly. "I mean, if you need someone to lift the heavy stuff, or sand the rust off." I looked at the boy. He was rough around the edges, covered in sawdust, but his eyes were sharp. He saw the gear, not the scrap metal. I thought of Julian, who had looked at this room and seen only junk. "I don't pay much," I said, adopting my stern auditor face. "And I'm very particular about how the tools are organized. Left to right, size order, no exceptions." Toby grinned. "I'm pretty good at organizing, sir." "Come by tomorrow at 4:30, I said. "We'll start with the mainspring. It needs to be retensioned. It's been under a lot of stress lately." "Yes, sir." Toby beamed. He ran back out to the truck to help his dad. I stood alone in the center of the room. The house was empty. The accounts were settled. The pests were gone. But as I looked at the workbench, I realized the house wasn't empty. It was just cleared, ready for new inventory. I took the sketches of Martha and placed them on the bench. "We're back in business, Martha," I whispered. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the key to the grandfather clock in the main hall. It was time to wind it up again. 6 months later, the house at Blackwood Bluffs sounded different. Gone was the hollow, echoing silence of the minimalist sanctuary. Gone was the screeching of Serena's juicer and the performative laughter of her guests. The house now had a heartbeat. Tick, tock, tick, tock. It was a symphony of brass and steel, resonating from the hallway where the 1890 Temperance and Company grandfather clock stood, fully restored. It was joined by the rhythmic scratching of a file against metal from the workshop. Where the windows were open to the salty ocean breeze, I sat at my own workbench, adjusting the loop over my eye. My hands were steady. "Mr. Sterling," I looked up. Toby was standing at the polishing wheel, holding a delicate pocket watch movement. He had filled out in the last few months, no longer the awkward teenager hauling scrap, but a young man with grease under his fingernails and a purpose in his eyes. "The hairspring," Toby said, frowning in concentration. "It's bent at the collet. Should I replace it?" I took the movement from him, examining it under the light. "No, it's original to the piece. 1920s Swiss. You can't buy the steel anymore. We reshape it. Heat and patience, Toby. Heat and patience." "Got it," he nodded. taking it back with a reverence Julian had never shown for anything that didn't have a Porsche logo on it. I watched him work. He wasn't my blood, but he was my legacy. He showed up early. He asked questions. He understood that value wasn't about price tags. It was about function.my laptop pinged. I swiveled my chair. It was the monthly report from the private investigator I kept on retainer, a small luxury, just to ensure the pests didn't return. I opened the file. Subjects: Sterling, J/Sterling, S/V, Vance. Subject 1, Julian Sterling. Location: Spokane, Washington. Employment: shift supervisor, big box home improvement center. Plumbing aisle. Status: living in a basement apartment. Wage garnishment active for outstanding lease penalties. Note: subject observed eating a sandwich in his car on lunch break. No cigars. Subject 2, Serena Sterling. Location: Boise, Idaho. Relocated. Employment: multi-level marketing associate, essential oils. Status: divorced. Filed Chapter 7 bankruptcy. Currently live streaming financial recovery journeys to an audience of 42 subscribers. Note: the G-Wagon was sold at auction for $80,000. Proceeds went to the IRS. Subject 3, Victoria. Location: Shady Pines State Subsidized Living. Status: 3 noise complaints lodged against her for shouting at the bingo caller. I closed the laptop. They were alive. They were surviving. They were exactly where they belonged, living lives they could actually afford. I picked up the brass pendulum, the one I had rescued from the mud that first day. I had engraved a date on the back of it. The date of the eviction. I walked out of the workshop and into the main house. The air was cool, thanks to the functioning AC, but it smelled of lemon oil and old books, not bleach and sage. I walked to the grandfather clock in the hall. I opened the glass case. I hung the pendulum on the suspension spring. Click. It began to swing. A slow, heavy, hypnotic rhythm. Tick, tock, tick, tock. Julian had said I was irrelevant. Serena had said I was just a bank account. They were wrong. I was the timekeeper. I had given them years of my life, and they had wasted it. Now I was taking my time back. Every second of peace, every moment of silence, every lesson taught to the boy in the workshop, it was all mine. The front door opened. Dave Miller walked in, carrying a crate of fresh apples from his orchard. "Elias," he called out, "Toby said you are looking for some walnut wood for a new cabinet case?" "I am, Dave," I smiled, closing the clock face. "Come in. The kettle is on." I looked at the reflection in the glass of the clock. An old man, yes, but not frail, not weak, and definitely not invisible. The house stood strong on the cliff. The fog rolled in, wrapping us in a blanket of gray. Inside, the clock chimed the hour. Bong, bong, bong. 3 o'clock. Everything was right on time. SEO and metadata . Here are the viral SEO assets for The Glass House of Cards. 1. Viral titles, Ragebait and Karma. Option 1. Daughter-in-law sold my dead wife's art for scrap, so I sold her $4 million house. Kandauba with acute and tranquoi vo qua ko qua to lay tien vun. Nen tuaba with acute and lon kana 4 true de qua kota. Option 2. They locked me in the basement to impress VIP guests, so I locked them out of their bank accounts. Ho not toi dui tang ham de raoai voi kok VIP. Nin toi qua sach tai koan nan hong qua ho. Option 3. She destroyed my workshop to build a yoga studio, so I destroyed her life with one phone call. Ko ta fa hui suong qua toa de zai fong tap yoga. Nin toi hui ha I kuok doi ko ta chi bang mot kuok oi. 2. Description. My daughter-in-law gutted my late wife's sanctuary to build a wellness retreat and forced me to sleep in the basement because I ruined her aesthetic. She thought I was a helpless old man, but she forgot one thing. I am the landlord, the bank, and the auditor. Elias Sterling spent years playing the frail grandfather while secretly funding his son's lavish lifestyle. But when they crossed the line by selling his wife's memories for scrap metal, the invisible bank closes its doors. Watch the most satisfying nuclear revenge as Elias executes a brutal 12-step plan, freezing the credit cards, repossessing the Porsches, cutting the AC during a heat wave, and calling the IRS, leaving them with nothing but a one-way bus ticket. Keywords: nuclear revenge, entitled family, instant karma, revenge story, financial ruin, narcissist collapse, family drama, Reddit stories. 3. Thumbtext, narrative, and shocking. Option A. I came home from the hospital. To find my daughter-in-law throwing my late wife's sketches into a dumpster. To make room for her yoga studio. So I called the IRS and watched them seize her entire business and luxury cars the next day. Option B. My son forced me to sleep in the damp basement so his wife could host a VIP retreat in my master suite. But they didn't know I owned the deed, so I turned off the AC and served them an eviction notice during their live stream. Option C. She mocked me for being frail while spending my retirement savings on her luxury lifestyle, so I froze every account and watched as the repo truck took her cars, leaving her to walk 10 miles to the bus station with nothing but her pride. Story_block_start. Current status. SEO assets generated. Protagonist info. Elias Sterling, 74. The Timekeeper. Outline summary. Story complete. SEO titles, description, and thumbnails generated. Next instruction. Generate image prompts. Story block 3 equals thumbnail A visual equals hyperrealistic 8K wide cinematic shot. A tense confrontation in an ultra-modern glass-walled mansion overlooking a stormy cliff. In the foreground, an intimidating 74-year-old man with short silver hair and sharp spectacles, wearing a weathered brown trench coat, stands stoically holding a bright orange legal document stamped eviction. He looks down with icy indifference. On the floor in front of him, a glamorous woman in a stained beige linen jumpsuit is on her knees, screaming in anguish, mascara running down her face, reaching desperately for the paper. Beside her, a man in a pastel polo shirt clutches his head in despair, looking at empty luxury boxes scattered on the marble floor. Dramatic lighting, deep shadows, cinematic color grading, high contrast, detailed textures. Thumbnail B. Text. Hyperrealistic 8K wide cinematic shot. 16:9. Split screen composition. Right side, 50%, an imposing 74-year-old man with silver hair and glasses, wearing a trench coat, stands in the foreground looking satisfied. In the background, a sobbing woman in a beige jumpsuit and a defeated man in a polo shirt are being escorted out of a modern glass mansion by sheriff deputies holding an eviction notice. Left side, 50%, a dark, blurred, charcoal-colored background. Overlay text. My son forced me to sleep in the damp basement so his wife could host a VIP retreat in my master suite, but they didn't know I owned the deed, so I turned off the AC and served them an eviction notice during their live stream. Written in gigantic, bright yellow font with thick black outlines, filling 99% of the left side.